Oh my, it's almost Christmas, my favorite time of the year, and I have nothing to play. I mean, all I have is like 200 games on my PlayStation 5. What will I ever do? Oh, I know, I'm going to play a video game about Christmas. Let's see what we've got. SSX 3? Nah, too retro. Batman Arkham Origins? Was that even a Christmas game? Spider-Man Miles Morales? I don't have that game. What is this? Yakuza for the PlayStation 2? I guess it counts. The game takes place in December after all, and look! There is a bench here! Yes, it's Yakuza time! I've never played the original PlayStation 2 games, but I love Kiwami, so I figured, why not now? It's not like I have any other things to do, including school or social life. What are you talking about? So, it's time to jump into the very first Yakuza game ever made. Yakuza is one of my favorite game franchises of all time, despite not playing half of the games, because I either don't have the time or I'm maxing out the games so I can go to the next one. Yes, I am that type of guy who does everything before moving on. Yakuza for me was always more than a Japanese GTA. In most factors, I love them more than any GTA games. The characters are epic and endearing, the story is interesting and complex, the world is fun and chaotic. And the series is stronger than ever. The Bakamitai meme made Yakuza 0 as known as it is today, making every YouTuber wanting to try it out because of the plain stupidity of what this series can achieve. Sega announced Yakuza 8, Kiwami Ishin, and Gaiden earlier this year, and yes, I'm going to call it Yakuza because Like a Dragon sounds weird and it doesn't really roll off the tongue that good. I'm sure I will get used to it, but for this video I'm going to call it Yakuza. I couldn't be happier with this, but instead of looking forward, I'm going to look backwards and play the very first Yakuza game ever made on the PlayStation 2. Also, if you don't want me to call a real life Yakuza on you, then you better subscribe and hit the bell. Thank you. Let's start with the simple things. In 2004, Sega wasn't exactly happy because their games weren't selling really well and the arcade market was down too, so they needed to change tactics. They merged teams together to make new games, and one of these new teams' leader was Nagoshi Toshihiro, who had a rich history in video gaming with titles like Virtua Fighter, F-Zero GX and Super Monkey Ball. They went out drinking to bond a newly formed team, and they said, "I want a game to be played here with the Yakuza." "Same, let's do it! But Sega won't allow us to make a game about criminals. All they're known about is Sonic." "Don't worry, I'll convince them." So he did. It wasn't as easy as I played it out to be, because it was nearly impossible to greenlight the game. Making a game for adults on a console was unheard of at the time, especially by Sega, the company who was famous for arcade games and Sonic the Hedgehog. Making something with blood, violence and sex about an underground mafia group was a really hardcore idea. And Nagoshi intended to make the game a domestic success rather than a global one. So this way they could put as many Japanese references as they wanted, because they didn't need to worry about other countries not being able to understand them. But for us, the only important thing is that he succeeded, and this crazy adventure that we love today has started. And on December 8, 2005, Kiryu Kazuma's story has begun. And fair warning, I'm going to assume that you've played Kiwami, so spoilers for that game. But what do I think of the first Yakuza game? Is it as good as the newest titles? Is it even enjoyable anymore? Should you play this or Kiwami first? Let's find out. I'm going to spoil one of the questions already by saying I found the game surprisingly good. The legendary Dragon of Dojima, Kiryu Kazuma takes a shot for Nishikiyama and goes to prison for 10 years. After leaving from there, Kiryu finds out that his sworn brother has become a maniac who is thirsty for power. No, not that power. While Kiryu tries to find the 10 million yen that has been stolen from the Tojo clan, he encounters Haruka, who turns out to be Kiryu's former lover's daughter, and all of this culminates in a big fight with Nishiki. I won't tell the whole story now because it's too long and complicated for this video and you probably already know it. The story has been crafted to be a real gangster story with love, betrayal and twists. And this game is pretty solid in that sense on its own, but in the original game a lot of cinematics were missing that were in Kiwami. For example, the ring buying segment was completely absent, and thus the strong connection between Yumi and Kiryu has never been made. Same with Nishiki. His friendship with Kiryu wasn't really there other than the mention of it. And Nishiki's sister was only mentioned at the very beginning of the game. That's it. Making his change from a nice guy to a power-thirsty family leader, nothing more than that. Somehow who wants money and power. Kashiwagi is giving Nishiki his own family is not here, the scene in the hospital is not here, the one where Nishiki asks for money is missing, and my favorite scene from Kiwami is not here. Where Nishiki breaks down and at the end he murders another man saying, after one, another doesn't matter. In short, the fundamentals of Nishiki's character and most importantly his downfall is missing. And with 3/4 of Nishiki's most important moments from Kiwami not being here, the final fight doesn't have any effects on the player and makes him an unimpactful villain. Yet, the story is well made for a first game, and not comparing it to Kiwami, it was revolutionary for its time. A dark, interconnecting storyline with dozens of characters is pretty amazing. But while the original story has its flaws, the gameplay is surprisingly solid. If you've played Yakuza 3 to 5 or just used the dragon style in Kiwami, you will get the exact same feeling. It's actually scary how well it has been made from the very beginning, so with tiny changes it still holds up to this day. It has the same feeling, the same button layout, the same speed, the same impact, everything. I wrote down that it has the same speed, but then I went back to Yakuza 4 and realized, no. It became a lot faster over the years, but instead of everyone blocking every attack of yours in 1v1, you are practically unbeatable. There are really a few encounters that are hard to beat, and they are mostly strong because of their mobility, and not because of their strength. And because the lock-on function don't really want to cooperate at times, and Kiryu just wouldn't turn to the enemies. So fighting in tight spaces with a lot of enemies is going to be a guaranteed hit in the face. And if you think the open world camera was annoying with its unmovability, wait until you realize you can't move the camera with the right stick in the few 3D spaces. You have to press L2 for everything. Right stick camera turning was already invented in 2005, so I don't see why couldn't you just use that. Old Japanese games really like inconveniences. Monster Hunter had these for years, and they just recently got rid of the annoying mechanics in World. I actually have no idea why old Japanese RPGs are so inconveniently designed. Even the item management is awful. But you know what? I really want to go to Japan now. They have but with no segue whatsoever, let's turn back to the fighting for a bit. You can upgrade your soul, technique and body with EXP, and you can get new abilities, and those can also be familiar from Kiwami. And also, the Komaki Tiger Drop, which, to be honest, nowhere near as powerful as in later games. But minigames are also back. I'm saying it's also back like it's a new game, but no. There are minigames. Unfortunately, there is no karaoke, because back there the series tried to be more serious and not so extra. But you know what's here? Probably my least favorite minigame in any Yakuza games. The Hostess Clubs. I'm sorry, but I just can't date. I don't know, what do I have to say to these whores to make them happy? Why are you sad? I did the right thing here. But you have massage and slot machines that are not in Kiwami, and of course you have baseball. And you have poker, blackjack and roulette to make your money grow, because they put the saving station right next to it, so if you lose a big bet, you can easily reload it. By the way, I love how the game asks, save data, okay? I don't know why, but that's funny as hell. And for some unimportant reason, you can watch TV. A really next-gen experience. But I found myself not really using any weapons or armor other than the very end, where without a bulletproof vest you are technically asking for bullets. And that car chasing part was actually a really great change of pace, and I had a lot of fun, and it was really intense too. And overall, the game looks really good despite being on the PlayStation 2. Sure, Kiryu sometimes looks like a womp, and characters on the street looks like apes, but Kamurocho and action scenes are amazing. But being on the PlayStation 2 brings a huge problem. Sure, it looks amazing, but it has its cost. Because it's a game with fixed cameras, and every time the camera switches, the game stops for 1 or 2 seconds. I'm not entirely sure if it's because I'm using an emulator or it was like this in general, but because other than a few graphical glitches, everything is perfect. So I assume it was like this originally. And it's really annoying, especially when you want to outrun a guy following you, but because of the camera switching, you get caught and you have to wait a good chunk of time to continue exploring again. Because on every single street corner, someone is waiting for you for sure. Like these clone girls or a guy named Yoda. So the fixed camera is really not my favorite in this game. I know it had to be done due to hardware limitations at the time, but it can really be disorienting, and if I wouldn't know Kamurocho's layout like my own hand, I could not have been able to find shops or leisure activities. There is a GeoGuessr for GTA 5. I want one for Yakuza 2. You know what? Let's make it real. So, how did you do? You know what? Don't bother because I don't care. But I do care about good characters in a video game, so let's talk about them. Kiryu is surprisingly fleshed out for the first game, since you know Nishiki isn't. I think they really wanted to make him tough, yet kind and lovable, and you know what? It worked. Kuroda Takaya gives off a more gentle Kiryu here than in later games because the character wasn't fully developed at this point. His voice is not that rough all the time.
Oi, oi. 別に俺ら、お前らと喧嘩するために来たんじゃねえんだよ。
And the other fan favorite of the franchise, Majima Goro.
お前、組立ち上げるって話やないかい。そうや、そこの店やったな。お前の馴染みがいるっちゅうのは、えらいええ女らしいの。
Majima is not a fleshed out character at all. I don't even think he was ever mentioned as the mad dog of Shimano in this game. He's crazy, don't get me wrong, but he is not as crazy as we love him. He's more like a serious and dangerous rival for Kiryu than a crazy and dangerous character. Ugaki Hidenari really changed his approach in the remake to match with Majima's later appearances. And of course, without the Majima Everywhere system, we only see him at the very beginning of the game, the time where he kidnaps Haruka, and at the Soapland. It's not a lot to get to know a character, especially Majima. But as we all know, we can get more Majima in later games, so that's perfect. The other character we see in later games and get to know better is Haruka. We practically see her grow up from game to game, and in the first game she gets a lot of spotlight because of her key role in the story. And in this game, her role and character is the same as in Kiwami. They didn't really change anything about her in the remake, and I haven't even noticed any major changes in her voice. Her character was really consistent from the start. But if we are already talking about voice actors, you might have noticed how I'm playing with Japanese dub instead of the highly beloved English one because it has Mark Goddamn Hamill in it. The reason is really simple. I just hate the English dub in anything that was originally in Japanese. You can't change my mind. Case closed. But how does all this compare to Yakuza Kiwami? Is the original game a forgotten masterpiece, living in the shadow of his own remake and waiting to be remembered again? No, while this game has its strong moments and can be enjoyable, it's nowhere near to Kiwami. Kiwami has more cutscenes and more character development, not to speak of the better and more intriguing fight system with more possibility and combos, and not to speak of the more minigames with two of my favorites being in Kiwami, Karaoke and Pool. The original Yakuza doesn't even have Mahjong. The reason why I know how to play Mahjong is because of Kiwami, so I'm kinda insulted by this. And the boss fights are way too easy in the original. I mean, just look at this epic wannabe fight with Shimano. In the original game, you only have to beat the bosses of bigger groups in the story in order to win. Talk about collectivism in Japan. So you can just focus on Shimano and you can win the fight in less than a minute. And the fight with Nishiki was stupidly easy too. It's not as epic as in Kiwami and not as intense because of the last cutscenes between Nishiki and Kiryu. The same goes for Nishiki's death. It just doesn't have the same heartbreaking feeling. But this doesn't mean the original Yakuza is a no-go. I had a great time playing it, and if you played Kiwami and you are curious about the original or finished the whole series and you just want more Yakuza in your life, then go ahead and try it. Just don't expect it to be the best Yakuza game to come out of it. But if you are new to the franchise, then why did you watch this video? It was full of spoilers. You know what, I don't care. Let's just say that if you are new to the series, then don't play this. You are going to get more out of Kiwami if you start with it. More gameplay, deeper characters and better fights. So there you go, this was the original Yakuza game. It's way more serious than later entries and tries to be this dark and engaging story, but it falls short on the character development, the camera usage and minigame side. But like I said, if you really want to try it out, then go on. You will have a great time, and the game doesn't even that long either, so it's perfect for some retro gaming weekend. And before you go, don't forget, this was a Christmas game. Merry Christmas to all of you. Bye!
どれだけ強いお酒でも歪まない思い出がバカみたい